It's the system that we're constantly changing as the technology dictates, and you can put people in asymmetrical roles where your career was linear. You take people that think and execute in different ways, and you can put them in asynchronous career paths. And that's the key to the talent that will thrive in the new world.
Welcome to The Edge for Tomorrow. I'm your host, Rose Reed, and today I'm joined by Cecile Munoz, who spent over 30 years at the Center of Financial Services Talent. She founded the U.S. Executive Search and Consulting in the early 90s, but she does way more than fill roles. She has unparalleled access to market intelligence and data points that reveal where finance is headed next. And that makes her the perfect person to ask, where are the talent gaps? And what does that tell us about where the industry is now and where it's going? Cecile, I'd love for you to maybe introduce yourself and, if you could say why you do what you do.
Wonderful. Rose, thank you so much. And I appreciate you having me on the podcast and above all, speaking about a topic not only that is so near and dear to my heart, but I think it is at the nexus of how we move on to the next phase of growth and professional development as a whole and as an industry for sure. Why I do what I do, it's one of those unplanned, wonderful adventures in life. I was an investment banker and not ever thinking about this side of the world, but I happen to fall upon it. And why I still do it is because I say, although I'm driven by numbers, I say when you argue to numbers, what is there to argue about? But what I really love to do is solve complex problems. And the most complex entities on the planet to me are human beings. And it's interesting to me how often we forget that. Giving my clients the access to perhaps take a different perspective and a different point of view of how they bring talent is really what gets me up in the morning, what drives me to do what I do, and what feeds me intellectually every day.
And if you were to describe what you do in a nutshell to someone who maybe hasn't had experience with your background and all of the different ways that you interact with people and organizations,
Mhm.
how would you describe maybe in a sentence, like, are you a matchmaker? Are you a connector? Are you like almost like a guardian angel, like seeing people for who they really are, or helping people see their real strengths? How would you describe like the fairy tale version?
That's a great question. So I'll tell you the way I've heard it described. I've heard it described that I am the talent whisperer for my corporate clients, that I help them really think through beyond the person to the impact and the effect the one to many can have. For the individuals that I work with, the talent that we bring to firms, I've been called a champion for them, but I've also been called a truth teller, that I hold the mirror up to them with love and compassion and support so that they can, especially for women, so that they can see who they truly are and be able to focus on the totality of what they can bring and be unembarrassed to ask for what they really want.
And how do you use this perspective and this insight in a macro way? How are you reading the landscape and seeing what's there, what's missing, and what has changed, and maybe what hasn't changed?
What hasn't changed is driven by what is in the more macro. So what is in the more macro is that we are in a multi-generational workforce. Very, very long time, if ever, do we have multiple generations in the workforce, from boomers all the way to Zs, and maybe very soon some alphas that could be taking part-time jobs. So you have wide gap of ideology, of philosophy, of just for how they want to show up to work is vastly different between the boomers to the Zs, let alone the alphas. So what we have is almost as if you threw all these people in a room and they all speak a version of English, but they have a very different vocabulary. And everyone is trying to effectively communicate. And then when you add, irrespective of your political ideology, we are living in a time where people have become almost isolated and anchored in their personal philosophy that it becomes harder for people to communicate. So when you add to that, you now have multiple generations, sometimes older generations overseeing younger, or sometimes a younger generation overseeing an older generation who walks in with very different ideas of how work should be, how you should show up, how you should communicate with each other. And so it has become much more difficult to create a harmonious workforce where people feel seen and heard and connected and engaged. That's number one. Number two, when you add technology, which is where I really want to lean in and focus on, when you add technology to that, it becomes even, instead of it being a greater connector, it is becoming almost a tool that separates the generations even more, because you have certain generations that are slower to adopt because they're not native versus others. Fixing the issue of training people from a technology perspective, which we must, it's not if, it's we must to survive or to be competitive in the world landscape. But it is that, to me, is a tactical solution. You can learn how to do X, right? Somebody can teach you push that button, do this, think of it this way. It's the other side, it's the human connection piece. We have to learn to listen better, to communicate better, and create a capacity to accept the differences of each other, but still find a path forward that works for everybody. Without that, we will continue to feel less than unified. And a company does not succeed when everyone is not putting the old saying, their oars in the water and rowing the same way. We can't.
And when you approach your work, how would you describe the difference of thinking of individuals versus thinking of systems? And how does that impact your either day to day or the end goal for what you're trying to accomplish?
I think because of the advances of AI, we all must, irrespective of the size of your firm, we must think about the workforce as a system. If you think about it, in the generation of the boomers and to some degree the seniors of the Xers, you had people that did X every day. They did these things, they punched these things. It was very tactical. It was very tactical and repetitive. And you trained them to do that and you left them to do that, and that was it. Maybe they'd advance, maybe they'd expand, maybe they'd manage people, but that's what they did. It was very, very repetitive, very measured, and you did it once and that's it. Technology, first of all, has and will continue to eradicate a lot of those roles in all industries. Fintech will definitely change that. But it, because it is constantly evolving, you now have to create a system by which, just on pure talent, you are hiring people that have an appetite for learning and that are ever learners and that lean into that. They're hungry and curious to constantly be learning and relearning and learning and relearning, where most people fear that. Most people shy away from that. The process of training and teaching and retraining has to be a system where we think about, we're going to hire 10 people to punch that red button, to we have to hire human capital that is constantly evolving and willing to retrain. And it's the system that we're constantly changing as the technology dictates. And you can put people in asymmetrical roles where your career was linear. You take people that think and execute in different ways, and you can put them in asynchronous career paths. And that's the key to the talent that will thrive in the new world.
Over the course of your career, how have you discerned someone's appetite for learning? And has that indicator, have those indicators changed over time?
Yes, because historically we have valued certain degrees, we have valued accomplishing and mastery of X. Oh, the person, you look at a resume and you look at, they've been doing this for the last 10, 15, 20, 25 years. They're a master of it. And so that is great because it tells you you have deep institutional knowledge, as I do in the work that I do. And so we measured it by years and success rate and percentages of success versus failure. And we recoiled against failure, right? Whereas just in the spirit of tech, fail often, fail fast, move on, right? Just the ideology, the mentality is completely different. So where we have to evolve is we have to look at people that have critical thinking, great problem solving skills, great communication skills, and great adaptive skills. All of that supports change and constant change. So we now have to not have a negative reaction or even a unconscious bias towards someone who has changed careers often, who has unwavering curiosity to try different things, and we measure their success based on the effectiveness of doing X at this period of time, doing Y at this period of time, and then how do they show up to the next with the collective information versus becoming a master of one thing. That mastery no longer serves mastery of your knowledge of how you learn and consume and then produce. Yes, but deep mastery of just X, no.
And when you look at the landscape of financial services and fintech uh, that employers are gearing up for, let's say in the next year or two, you know, are you how what do you think those challenges are, and how do you think that companies are responding to those challenges? Are they looking for specific talent or retaining talent or something else?
I think that we are now in a position where we have to be very comfortable with non-financial services native executive leadership. We have historically prioritized people that grew up in our industry because we felt so strongly that having our domain knowledge growing up as a trader or somewhere in financial services, that was more valuable than anything else that they would have had, especially if we're leading from a technology perspective. That no longer is the case because a lot of that deep knowledge, even on the investment side, AI is doing a lot of that. When BlackRock announced that most of their portfolios are being handled through AI, what are the rest of us arguing about? The adaptation has to be to look at talent outside of financial services, whether it's tech or it's somewhere else. But we're looking for that particular talent that that person possesses, and if they're missing a particular skill of expertise from a domain knowledge in our industry, that again they have the intelligence to understand it. But we need in financial services as a whole, we need fresh outside out of our industry perspective, especially the knowledge of how to serve the younger generations, because we are anchored in the older generations because they have historically managed the wealth, but that wealth is transferring. It's 44, 47 trillion, I think, by today's just in the US, that is transferring to the millennial generation and younger. They think differently. We have not marketed to them effectively. Look at what just happened. The YouTuber, the biggest, largest YouTuber, just launching a quasi bank as a software solution. He's a YouTuber. He's what, 27 years old, effectively entering our industry. Zero knowledge, 465 million subscribers. That tells you everything that we need to know about how to we have to rethink, we have to evolve. We're still somewhere, not maybe not analog, but close to it.
And when you look at the firms and the leaders that are at the frontier of this evolution, who are, let's say, doing things in a way that you find that's innovative and cutting edge and thoughtful and intentional, do you think that they're approaching it by hiring for the right roles or because they're understanding how those roles fit together?
I think from the smaller, more tech savvy firms, you have firms like Betterment. They do really cool things. I think from a big behemoth, the 800-pound gorilla, you have firms like Fidelity, because Fidelity, even back in the 90s, I've over the years I've done business with Fidelity across the organization. Back in the 90s, they had Devonshire Technologies, a tech company within a big behemoth of Fidelity that did nothing but go out there and look at technology, constantly looking at what they're doing, what's the next, and either investing in them, acquiring them, or something else. So I think that they're doing a great job at that. Um, I think everybody else is still trying to find the right footing, because the one question that they come to me with, and the talent that they're most seeking now, I think that was one of your questions that I didn't address, and that is finding executive leadership with advisors so that they can better connect with the investors, because engagement has become a challenge because we're not speaking the same language, especially in a multi-generational world. we as the house, as the firm, has to be able to communicate and engage the advisors that then go out and connect with the retail community as a whole, and we're not doing that really well. It's like we're speaking two very different languages.
I found it interesting how you phrased the way that you're looking for someone who can learn and adapt. How do you coach your clients to see someone differently with your eyes, someone's potential rather than their storybook?
Great question. And that is, first of all, with respect to women, and I will put millennials in that category too, especially if the client is a certain generation, Rose, that has historically valued a long history of accomplishments. So you're giving someone the responsibility to hire someone that does not meet the framework that they have successfully hired people for the last 25 years. Deep pedigree experience on a resume of 18, 20, 25 years of doing what the client needs to do is a very challenging proposition. So I put myself on both sides of that table. So on the side of the hiring manager, I am asking that person to take a deep risk because he or she, usually he, is being asked to do something different than what they've done for years that has rendered them success and perhaps promotion. But the truth of it is, especially when it for women and in millennials and millennial women, this is very much the case. Because as an industry, financial services, we've made some great inroads, but we are very far from parity on promotion and responsibilities or roles, especially C-suite roles, CEOs, CFOs, COOs, held by women versus men. So because of that gap, don't have not held those roles. They have not been given the opportunity. So what I ask my clients to do, it first starts with setting the expectations. If they say, I need to hire X, Cecile, because I need to accomplish these 5 things, I anchor on you are looking for someone to accomplish these things. Here are the barriers to entry into achieving these goals. The person needs to have these skills, this knowledge and this ability to communicate and to influence or to execute on such strategies. Then I bring forth an individual that has the intellectual bandwidth, that has enough of the experience. I say this may not be the trunk of the tree, but she has had so many branches near this tree that they have the perspective, they have the knowledge, but they also have something that someone that has done it for the last 25 years does not have. And that is the ability to be at the ground level with the people that you're asking this person now to drive and to influence. She is going to bring such incredible credibility because she can be relatable. She has a communication vocabulary and an energy that is going to be relatable because the best laid strategy falters in execution. If you know where you need to go and you're asking someone to drive you there, drive someone that has the capacity to energize the team to take action, number one. And number two, if this is a strategy that has an overarching enterprise value on a long-term basis, you want a soldier, because we have to use just the fact that I use that vernacular tells you the generation that I'm talking to, right? Or it can say you need to have an evangelist or a leader that is not going to run out of steam and that has the ability to use technology to maximize the workflow that is going to take, where this person, it will take him 10 hours to do X, this person will take 2. Number one. And number two, as a CEO, one of the greatest values you bring to the firm is to constantly be building the next generation of leaders in your bench. And this is how you do it, by investing in talent and growing talent. And then the last piece of it is we all talk about talent retention. You want to talk about building loyalty and trust. You give somebody an opportunity to stretch beyond what you have given them. And if you take the risk and they take the risk and it lands, no one will work harder for you than that person because you believe in them. And that matters.
And, when you speak, I can hear your own evangelism. I can hear your own way that you champion not just both people on both sides of the aisle, but the work itself and the
Mhm.
industry and the growth and the potential that you see just in this organization or in that impact that that organization could have. Did you have a catalyst, experience that really put you on this path that, or have you always kind of had this ability to, to kind of like see the potential?
I think if I if you were to ask my family, they would say she knew from the age of 6 that she was going to leave the small town that she was born into because it was just not enough. So I think it's nature and nurture. I think it's always been in my nature. What made me a great analyst is what makes me a great analyst of talent. And that is I connect the dots and I see things in nonlinear ways. And I'm able to see beyond the phenomenal presentation of people when they present themselves to me as to who they are. I deal with highly educated, highly confident, experienced individuals. But what really drove me is that I was that young woman in the room. I was told that I was a triple minority, which was new on me because I did know that I could go up to three. And the reason was because I was a female, I am Hispanic, and I was young. And so even though it was a while ago, I know what it feels like to not be taken seriously because I happen to be younger than most people in the room. But the fact that I'm in the room and people are listening to me means that what I am saying is of value to them. And the reason I have such conviction to champion people is because I know the incredible value of turning to someone and you see that they see you, that they see what you're capable of. And you may not see me again ever in your life, but being seen, being reminded that we have to fight for the agency that we deserve, that we have the right to be heard, to be given an opportunity. You better bring it. I know the world as it is, and I work in the world as it is, but it's my job to try and make it to the way I think it should be. So I understand that the world is unfair, and I know that it's my job to show you how I will succeed, even if it's unfair. And so that hopefully I have influenced you to make it more fair for someone else tomorrow. I have to be passionate. I have to have conviction. And I tell you what, the same conviction that I have when I'm presenting somebody is not on 100% on the spine, but it's a stretch higher for my clients. Hopefully, I will infuse them with that confidence, but the individual, that hopefully he or she will take that and pay it forward and inspire somebody else. And I can tell you, they do. When you give somebody a chance, we see it in actors, all these wonderful actors, right? Like Keanu Reeves. Everybody talks about Keanu Reeves being so generous. Why? Because the man lived in a car, right? He had nothing and he has not forgotten that. So he pays it forward. We can all do that. It's no different in talent. Why we can't retain the younger generation? Because the younger generation, luckily, was raised to believe that we matter, that they have a voice, that they have something to contribute, and they should be seen. We are all better that way. We talk about customer engagement, we talk about being authentic to clients, and the more technologically advanced we become, the better humans we must be. So, what's in the water and talent? What's everybody focusing on? The client retention and engagement. Because when the machines are calling us and something happens, we want to talk to a human. So, the humans that we put in a position of authority or connection with clients, they have to be authentic. They have to be real. They have to care. And it starts from the first action that you make of hiring someone that doesn't look like a safe bet, but it's the person you should be hiring. It's not easy, but it's the work we have to do.
And when you look ahead where are you seeing the biggest talent opportunities in fintech and financial services, not over this next year, but let's say the next 3 to 5 years?
So we have on the private wealth side, we have, yes, even though we're in that K economy, right? The 1% is getting richer and everybody else seems to not. Even though that dynamic is still happening. We still are in a boom. People are making money in strange and wondrous and wonderful ways. So there is still a lot of wealth, and we still are. It is our responsibility to create the wealth that allows us to live the kind of life that we want to live. So when we think about the private wealth world, um, fintech has done tremendous, tremendous things to help financial advisors, boutique firms, large firms thrive, because what used to take great difficulties to do and you need to be associated with a big firm like Merrill Lynch, you can now do on your own or affiliated with another boutique firm, because technology has been the great equalizer for that. But with all of that, we are still, as we see every day, in this great advisor shortage. We have a massive shortage of advisors to serve the needs of clients, especially as the wealth is transferring. And you think about that and you think, that is one of the most ridiculous things. How it's like saying, we need more air. Our business is outside, but somehow we need more air. And you think, breathe deeper. How can we be in this shortage? And I'll tell you why. Because we're still recoiling against the younger generation. Because the older generation doesn't want to retire out, which they shouldn't. This is one of the great things about this, about being a financial advisor. You can work until you can work no more, but you have to make room for the next generation, and you have to hire them. You have to train them. You have to educate them. You have to give them an opportunity. We don't have an advisor shortage problem. We have inclusion and acceptance problem. And I don't mean inclusion in other ways of your ideology. It's just believe that you can train somebody to do this. And they will not sound like you, which is a good thing, because they should sound like the grandchildren of the clients whose money you're managing. That's what they should sound like. And you know what? Maybe you'll learn something in the process. We don't have a shortage problem. We have a identity problem. We are no longer the Xers and the boomers. We should not be thinking of the generation that's going to be in control the next 5 years, let alone the next 10. We should take pride in saying, my legacy is not going to be the name on the door of this building. My legacy, or making a lot of money for my clients, because you should have done that already. My legacy is going to be that I made it available for all of these kids, all of these people, all of these Xers and younger of the Xers and the millennials and the Zs to come into an industry that gives you such wonder financial success, makes you help other people. And they're doing it 90% different than I did it, but I'm the one that got them there. I would die happy if that was, even if they don't remember my name, who cares? But to do that, to be the, like when you, like the first ripple in the water, you don't even see where the ripples end. Who gives a rat's patootie, right? Who cares? Sorry about that. I get very passionate. Leave the ego out. Be that first ripple. Don't worry where it ends. Just worry where it starts. You be the person that starts it.
And when you think about your own challenges and opportunity, especially for growing your business and for achieving the goals that you would like to do in the next year to 3 years, where do you see your big challenge and your big opportunity?
Well, my big challenge is just like those executives. I could be a much bigger firm, but if I get bigger and I bring more people, then I'm running the business instead of doing the business. But the reason why I have such depth of market intelligence is because over the last 30 years, I have had conversations with some of the most successful, most well-recognized financial executives in our industry. Many of them are still my clients. A lot of them are now running private equity firms that I do business with. So I've had the privilege of having millions of conversations over so many years. I selfishly don't want to give that up. It feeds me to have these conversations. I enjoy solving the problems. I'm smart because I speak to very smart people every day. So my challenge is accepting that I'm going to be a boutique firm because I love the work that I do. You know what? And that's the other thing. You don't have to be big to matter. You just have to be good to matter.
Well, thank you so much for your time and for inspiring me and others. Where can folks find you?
usexecutivesearch.com. We also have a podcast that is Ends with Z, where we talk about really life lessons. But usexecutivesearch.com is where you will find me. And if you don't find me, you will find one of my staff members that will dig me out of my grave to put you on my calendar to have a conversation with me.
Well, thank you so much.
It was my pleasure, Rose. Thanks for the work that you do.